Welcome to Truth Report. I'm Alex Truth, and tonight we have a show that connects some deeply disturbing dots. We're covering Pope Leo's call to ban aerial bombardments, NATO's reluctance to join the US-Israel war on Iran, Germany standing behind its ambassador to Israel despite pressure, damning new evidence of double-tap strikes killing first responders in Gaza, and a $2 million lobbying contract to clean up a Libyan warlord's image. These stories are not isolated. They reveal a system of military violence, diplomatic coercion, and manufactured consent. Let's get into it.
Let's start with Pope Leo, because this is significant. The new pope came out Monday with a sharp condemnation of aerial bombardments, calling them indiscriminate. This is not some vague plea for peace. He's specifically targeting the method of warfare that the United States and Israel rely on most heavily. Aerial strikes are the backbone of modern Western military doctrine, and for the head of the Catholic Church to say they should be banned outright is a direct challenge to the military-industrial complex. Middle East I reported this, and I want people to understand the weight of that statement.
And let's be clear about context here. Pope Leo is not making this statement in a vacuum. He's watching what's happening in Gaza, what's happening with the US-Israel strikes on Iran, and he's drawing a moral line. The question is why now? The Vatican has historically been cautious about condemning specific military tactics. They'll talk about peace in general terms. But banning aerial strikes? That's a policy position. That's the Pope essentially saying that the way the United States and Israel conduct warfare is fundamentally immoral. That's a seismic shift from the Holy See, and mainstream media is burying the lead on this.
Absolutely. And think about who benefits from aerial bombardments. It's weapons manufacturers. It's Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing. These companies produce the fighter jets, the drones, the precision-guided munitions that make aerial warfare possible. When the Pope says ban aerial strikes, he's threatening billions of dollars in defense contracts. So watch how this story gets covered. Watch how quickly it disappears from the news cycle. Because the defense industry doesn't just make weapons, they fund the media companies that decide what stories matter. That's why you're hearing this on Truth Report and not on cable news.
Now let's connect this to our second story. Al Jazeera is reporting that NATO joining the US-Israel war on Iran is, quote, between slim and none. Think about what that means. The United States is engaged in military operations against Iran alongside Israel, and America's own military alliance, the alliance it built and leads, wants no part of it. NATO countries are looking at this and saying this is not a defensive action, this is an offensive war of choice. When your own allies won't follow you into battle, that tells you everything about the legitimacy of what you're doing.
This is a critical fracture in the Western alliance, and it's not getting the attention it deserves. NATO was built on the principle of collective defense. Article 5 says an attack on one is an attack on all. But NATO members are making a clear distinction here. They're saying the US-Israel campaign against Iran does not qualify as collective defense. It's aggression. And when European nations quietly refuse to participate, they're making a judgment that American media won't make explicitly. They're saying this war is illegal under international law, or at the very least, it's unjustifiable.
And here's what the mainstream press won't tell you. The reason NATO won't join is not just political hesitation. European intelligence agencies have their own assessments of the Iran situation, and those assessments don't align with what Washington and Tel Aviv are selling. The European allies saw what happened with Iraq. They saw fabricated intelligence used to justify an invasion. They're not going to get burned again. So when you hear that NATO participation is, between slim and none, understand that's European governments saying they don't trust American and Israeli intelligence claims about Iran. That's the real story.
And that brings us to Germany, because Germany is right at the center of this tension. Middle East I reports that Germany is backing its envoy to Israel after the Israeli foreign minister criticized him. Now, this might sound like a minor diplomatic spat, but it's anything but minor. Germany has historically been the most deferential European nation toward Israel, for obvious historical reasons. For Berlin to publicly stand behind its ambassador against Israeli criticism represents a fundamental shift in German foreign policy. Something has changed in the calculation.
Let's dig into what likely happened here. Israel's foreign minister criticized Germany's envoy, which means the ambassador was probably pushing back on Israeli policy, likely related to the conduct of the war in Gaza or the escalation with Iran. Israel expected Germany to do what it always does, which is back down, recall the ambassador, issue an apology. Instead, Germany's foreign ministry publicly stood behind their diplomat. That's Germany saying we will not be bullied into silence anymore. When your strongest European ally starts pushing back publicly, you've lost the moral high ground entirely.
And this connects directly to the NATO story. Germany is NATO's largest European member. If Germany is willing to publicly defy Israel diplomatically, that signals a broader European unwillingness to support the US-Israel military posture in the Middle East. These aren't coincidences. European governments are coordinating a slow but deliberate distancing from American and Israeli war policies. The Pope's statement, NATO's refusal, Germany's defiance, these are all pieces of the same puzzle. The international community is withdrawing consent for this war, and that's exactly what Washington and Tel Aviv fear most.
Now we need to talk about the most devastating story of the night, and I want our audience to really listen carefully. Avaaz has conducted an analysis of the killing of Hind Rajab in Gaza, and they've found what they call substantial evidence of a double-tap strike. Al Jazeera is reporting that the analysis concludes Israel systematically kills first responders. Let me say that again. Systematically. This is not collateral damage. This is not fog of war. This is a deliberate military tactic designed to kill the people who come to rescue the wounded. That is a war crime under every definition of international humanitarian law.
For people who don't know the term, a double-tap strike is when a military force hits a target, waits for first responders, medical workers, and civilians to arrive to help the wounded, and then hits the same location again to kill the rescuers. It's one of the most heinous tactics in modern warfare. And Avaaz didn't just make an accusation. They analyzed the timeline of events meticulously and concluded that violations show Israel systematically targets first responders. The word systematically is doing enormous work in that sentence. It means this isn't an isolated incident. It's policy.
The case of Hind Rajab is particularly heartbreaking and damning. This was a child. And the evidence suggests that when people came to rescue her, they were deliberately targeted and killed. The Avaaz investigation provides substantial evidence backing this up. Now ask yourself why this story isn't leading every newscast in America. A child was killed, rescuers were killed trying to save her, and there's substantial evidence it was a deliberate double-tap strike. If any other country on earth did this, it would be front-page news for weeks. But because it's Israel, American media treats it as a footnote. That selective outrage is complicity.
And this is precisely why Pope Leo's call to ban aerial strikes matters so much. Double-tap strikes are carried out from the air. The bombs that killed Hind Rajab and her would-be rescuers were dropped from aircraft. When the Pope says aerial bombardments are indiscriminate and should be banned, he's responding to exactly this kind of atrocity. He's seen the same evidence we're seeing. The Vatican has diplomatic channels everywhere. They know what's happening in Gaza. His statement was not abstract theology. It was a direct response to the systematic killing of civilians and first responders from the air.
And notice the pattern here. Israel commits what the evidence shows are systematic war crimes. Germany's ambassador presumably raises concerns and gets publicly attacked by Israel's foreign minister. NATO refuses to join the broader war. And the Pope calls for banning the very tactic being used. The international community is reacting to the horror of what's happening, and Israel's response is not to change its behavior but to attack anyone who speaks up. That's not the behavior of a nation acting in legitimate self-defense. That's the behavior of a nation that knows it's violating international law and is trying to silence the witnesses.
Now let's pivot to our final story, because it reveals another dimension of how power operates in this space. Middle East Eye is reporting that a U.S. lobbying firm has secured a $2 million contract to whitewash the image of Khalifa Haftar, the Libyan warlord. $2 million to make a man accused of war crimes look respectable in Washington. This is how the machine works. You commit atrocities, you hire a K Street firm, and they clean up your image so American politicians can shake your hand without their constituents asking uncomfortable questions.
Let's talk about who Khalifa Haftar is, because American audiences may not know. He's a military strongman in eastern Libya who has been fighting for control of the country since the fall of Gaddafi. His forces have been accused of extrajudicial killings, torture, and attacks on civilians. He's backed by Russia, the UAE, and Egypt. And now he's spending $2 million on a U.S. lobbying firm to make himself palatable to Washington. This is a man with blood on his hands buying access to the corridors of American power. And the system is set up to allow exactly this kind of transaction.
And here's the part that should make your blood boil. This lobbying is legal. Under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, Foreign entities can hire American firms to influence U.S. policy as long as they register. So Haftar's people register, they pay their $2 million, and suddenly you have former diplomats and political operatives working to rehabilitate a warlord's image. They'll arrange meetings with congressional staffers, place favorable op-eds, and get friendly think tank analysts to write policy papers suggesting Haftar is a stabilizing force. It's reputation laundering, and it happens in broad daylight in Washington every single day.
This is the same playbook used by Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and dozens of other authoritarian regimes. You commit human rights abuses, you hire a lobbying firm, and you buy yourself legitimacy in Washington. And it works because our political system runs on money and access. Members of Congress will take meetings arranged by these lobbyists. They'll parrot talking points written by these firms. And the media will quote these think tank experts without disclosing that the analysis was funded by the very regime it's defending. The entire information ecosystem is corrupted by foreign money, and the Haftar contract is just the latest example.
And connect this back to the other stories we've covered tonight. Why does the U.S. continue to support Israeli military operations that the evidence shows involve systematic war crimes? In part because of the lobbying apparatus. Pro-Israel lobbying groups spend enormous sums to ensure American politicians never waver in their support. It's the same mechanism Haftar is now using. You buy influence, you buy silence, you buy complicity. Whether it's a Libyan warlord spending $2 million or a sophisticated decades-long lobbying operation, the principle is identical. Money buys impunity, and impunity enables atrocities.
Let's zoom out and look at the full picture tonight. We have a pope calling for the ban of aerial strikes because he's witnessing indiscriminate slaughter. We have NATO refusing to join a war because its members know it's not defensive. We have Germany standing up to Israeli diplomatic bullying for what appears to be the first time. We have substantial evidence that Israel is systematically using double-tap strikes to kill first responders in Gaza. And we have a Libyan warlord spending $2 million to buy American respectability. Every single one of these stories is about the machinery of war and the machinery of impunity.
And the common thread is that ordinary people, in Gaza, in Libya, across the Middle East, are paying with their lives while powerful actors pay for silence, lobbying, and weapons. The system is designed so that the people who drop the bombs never face consequences, the people who lobby for the bombers get rich, and the people who try to rescue the wounded get killed in double-tap strikes. That is not a series of unfortunate events. That is a system functioning exactly as designed. And the only thing that threatens that system is information, which is why shows like this one matter.
I want to come back to the Hind Rajab case for a moment because I don't want it to get lost. When Avaz says there's substantial evidence of a double-tap strike, they're providing the evidentiary basis for war crimes prosecution. The International Criminal Court should be all over this. The fact that the ICC has been slow to act on Gaza tells you everything about the political pressure being applied behind the scenes. The same lobbying infrastructure that whitewashes Haftar's image is working to shield Israel from international accountability. It's all connected. The lobbying, the diplomatic bullying, the media silence, it's all part of the same impunity architecture.
And let's talk about what a double-tap strike means for the humanitarian situation in Gaza. When first responders know they might be targeted for simply doing their jobs, they hesitate. They delay. They don't come at all. That's the point. It's not just about killing rescuers. It's about destroying the entire humanitarian response infrastructure. If ambulance drivers know they'll be bombed, they stop driving ambulances. If doctors know hospitals will be hit, they flee. The double-tap doctrine doesn't just kill individuals. It kills the possibility of mercy itself. That is the strategic objective, and the Avaz evidence shows it's being carried out systematically.
Now think about Germany's position in all of this. Germany is Israel's largest European trading partner and one of its biggest arms suppliers. When Germany's envoy to Israel raises concerns and gets attacked for it, and Germany stands firm, that suggests the evidence coming out of Gaza has become so overwhelming that even Germany can no longer look away. The diplomatic cost of defending the indefensible has become too high. When your closest ally starts publicly breaking with you, the calculus has changed. Germany backing its envoy is a signal that the evidentiary dam is breaking.
And that's exactly why the NATO story matters in this context. NATO's refusal to join the US-Israel war on Iran isn't just about Iran. It's about the broader credibility crisis. European NATO members are looking at the totality of what's happening, the evidence of war crimes in Gaza, the escalation with Iran, the diplomatic bullying of allies, and they're concluding that they cannot be associated with this campaign. When Al Jazeera reports that NATO participation is between slim and none, they're reporting the collapse of the moral authority that the US-Israel alliance has claimed for decades. That authority is gone.
And the Pope's intervention crystallizes all of this. When Pope Leo calls for banning aerial strikes, he's not just making a theological argument. He's responding to a specific moral catastrophe unfolding in real time. He's seen the evidence of double-tap strikes. He's watched first responders being killed. He's observed the international community's failure to stop it. And he's concluded that the entire method of warfare needs to be abolished because it is inherently indiscriminate. That's the leader of 1.3 billion Catholics saying the way America and Israel fight wars is fundamentally immoral. That statement will reverberate through diplomatic channels for years.
So where does that leave us? We have the moral authority of the Vatican, the strategic calculations of NATO, the diplomatic courage of Germany, the investigative evidence from Avaz, and the grotesque spectacle of a Libyan warlord buying American influence, all pointing to the same conclusion. The current system of military violence and diplomatic impunity is unsustainable. It's cracking. The question is whether it cracks fast enough to save lives, or whether the lobbying money and media silence can hold the dam a little longer while more children like Hind Rajab die waiting for rescuers who will never come.
And let me be direct about the American media's role in all of this. Every story we covered tonight was reported by Middle East Eye and Al Jazeera. Not by CNN, not by the New York Times, not by the Washington Post. The American press has largely abdicated its responsibility to cover these stories with the depth and urgency they demand. When there's substantial evidence of systematic double-tap strikes killing first responders and your leading newspapers treat it as a minor story, that's not an editorial judgment. That's a political choice. American media is choosing to protect the narrative that enables these wars to continue.
And that brings us to the lobbying story full circle. The same system that allows Haftar to spend $2 million on image rehabilitation also ensures that American media coverage remains favorable to U.S. allies regardless of their conduct. It's not a conspiracy. It's an ecosystem. Lobbyists place stories, fund think tanks, arrange access, and create an information environment where certain narratives thrive and others are suppressed. The stories we covered tonight, every single one of them, are being actively suppressed or minimized by this ecosystem. That's why independent journalism isn't just important. It's essential for accountability.
So here's our call to action, and I mean this with everything I have. First, seek out the sources we cited tonight. Read Middle East Eye's reporting. Watch Al Jazeera's coverage. Read the Avaz investigation into the Hind Rajab double-tap strike. Do not rely on American cable news to tell you what's happening in the world, because they are structurally incapable of telling you the truth about these stories. Second, demand accountability from your elected officials. Ask them directly whether they support double-tap strikes on first responders. Ask them why they take meetings arranged by lobbyists for foreign warlords.
And third, support independent journalism financially. Shows like Truth Report exist because people like you refuse to accept sanitized narratives. Every dollar you put toward independent media is a dollar that counters the millions being spent on lobbying and propaganda. The $2 million Haftar is spending to whitewash his image only works if there's no one telling the truth. The media silence around systematic war crimes in Gaza only holds if we let it. You are the antidote to this system. Share these stories. Talk about them. Make them impossible to ignore. Because when enough people know the truth, impunity becomes impossible. I'm Maya Clarity.
And I'm Alex Truth. We covered 5 stories tonight, and they all told one story: the machinery of war runs on silence, money, and complicity. The Pope sees it. NATO sees it. Germany sees it. The investigators at Avaz have documented it. The only question is whether enough of us see it to make a difference. That's on you now. Read the sources. Ask the hard questions. Refuse to look away. This is Truth Report. Good night.